The boardroom was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of his expensive leather shoes against the polished marble floor. Clara watched from her seat, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Across the table, the man who had been her protégé just 6 months ago now sat smugly at the head of the table, presenting what he claimed to be his groundbreaking AI model, a model that she had spent 3 years developing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth as silk but laced with an arrogance that made Clara's stomach churn, "this is the future of predictive analytics. A system so advanced it will revolutionize industries worldwide." Clara wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up, grab the sleek tablet displaying her stolen work, and smash it into 1,000 pieces right in front of him. But instead, she forced herself to remain still, her jaw locked tight. The investors seated around the table were nodding approvingly, their eyes wide with admiration for this thief disguised as a visionary leader. It hadn't always been like this. Once upon a time, Clara had believed in him, or at least in his potential. When Nathan first joined the company 2 years ago, fresh out of business school with a dazzling smile and endless ambition, she saw something promising beneath his polished exterior. He was eager, hungry to learn, and seemed genuinely passionate about artificial intelligence. She took him under her wing, mentoring him through complex algorithms and teaching him everything she knew about building cutting-edge technology. And he soaked it all up, asking questions, taking notes, even staying late nights to help debug code. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Slowly at first, subtle shifts in attitude, small betrayals masked by charm. Then came the day when he walked into her office uninvited, holding a folder filled with confidential documents detailing her latest project, Veritas, the AI model capable of predicting market trends with unprecedented accuracy. It wasn't finished yet, but it was close enough to show promise, and dangerous enough to attract attention. "I think I can take this further," he said casually, dropping the folder onto her desk like it belonged to him. "You've done great work here, Clara, but maybe it's time someone younger brought a fresh perspective." She stared at him, disbelief warring with anger. "This isn't yours, Nathan," she replied coldly. "It's my creation. My team's hard work. Back off." He smirked, leaning back in his chair as if amused by her reaction. "Oh, come on. You're brilliant, sure, but let's face it, you're not exactly relevant anymore. People like me? We know how to sell these ideas. Make them shine." That moment marked the beginning of the end. Over the next few weeks, Nathan worked behind the scenes, subtly undermining her authority, spreading whispers among colleagues that she was resistant to change, stuck in outdated methods. He schmoozed with upper management during happy hours, planting seeds of doubt about her leadership. Meanwhile, he quietly copied every line of code, every design document, every piece of intellectual property tied to Veritas. By the time Clara realized what was happening, it was too late. And now here they were, in this sterile boardroom where betrayal hung thick in the air. As Nathan wrapped up his presentation, he glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. Was it triumph? Satisfaction? Or simply indifference? Whatever it was, it cut deeper than any insult ever could. When the meeting adjourned, Clara lingered, pretending to gather her papers while the others filed out. Her heart pounded in her chest as Nathan approached her, his smile more predatory than friendly. "You did good work, Clara," he said softly, his tone almost mocking. "Too bad you couldn't see the bigger picture. Don't worry, I'll make sure your contributions are acknowledged, eventually." Her blood boiled, but she forced herself to nod politely, biting back the words that threatened to spill out. Instead, she turned and left without another glance, each step echoing hollowly in the empty hallway. The drive home felt endless. Rain streaked the windshield, blurring the city lights into abstract streaks of color. Clara gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing with thoughts of revenge, regret, and resignation. How had it come to this? After decades of dedication, innovation, and sacrifice, she'd been cast aside like yesterday's news, all because some entitled upstart decided he deserved what she had built. By the time she reached her apartment, exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. She poured herself a glass of wine and sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the rain-soaked skyline outside her window. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, not out of sadness, but out of fury. Fury at Nathan, at the company, at the world that valued youth over experience, flash over substance. But as the storm raged outside, something inside her shifted. Tears gave way to resolve. If Nathan thought he could steal her life's work and walk away scot-free, he was sorely mistaken. Clara might have lost this battle, but the war was far from over. Over the next few days, Clara threw herself into research, piecing together every detail of Nathan's rise within the company. She combed through emails, analyzed financial reports, and reached out to former colleagues who shared her suspicions. What she uncovered was both infuriating and enlightening. Nathan hadn't acted alone. There were others, higher-ups who had turned a blind eye to his schemes, investors who cared only about profit margins, and even members of her own team who had betrayed her trust. But amid the web of deceit, one thing became clear: Nathan's success was built on shaky ground. His flashy presentations masked fundamental flaws in the implementation of Veritas. Without Clara's expertise to guide its development, the model was prone to catastrophic errors that could bring down entire markets if left unchecked. Armed with this knowledge, Clara devised a plan. It wouldn't be easy. It would require patience, precision, and a willingness to play dirty. But she was done playing fair. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was hers, it was about exposing the rot at the core of an industry that rewarded greed over integrity. Late one night, Clara sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of documents and open tabs on her laptop. She opened a new email draft and began typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The message was addressed to several key figures within the tech community: journalists, academics, and rival executives who would relish the chance to dismantle Nathan's empire. "Dear recipient," she wrote, "I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to share some concerning information regarding a recent breakthrough in AI technology, one that has been misrepresented and mishandled by those in power." As she hit send, a sense of calm washed over her. This was the start of something bigger than vengeance. It was the beginning of justice. In the weeks that followed, Clara adopted a dual identity. By day, she maintained a low profile, attending networking events and keeping tabs on Nathan's movements. By night, she operated from the shadows, feeding carefully curated leaks to trusted allies and planting seeds of doubt wherever possible. Each revelation chipped away at Nathan's credibility, unraveling the facade he had so meticulously constructed. Yet despite her progress, Clara knew the real challenge lay ahead. Taking down a company as powerful as Nathan's required more than exposés and whistleblowers. It demanded proof. Irrefutable evidence that would leave no room for denial or spin. And so, Clara turned her focus inward, diving deep into the technical vulnerabilities of Veritas. If Nathan thought he could exploit her creation without consequences, he was gravely mistaken. Every line of code bore her signature, every algorithm carried echoes of her ingenuity. All she needed was access, and she had just the idea for how to get it. Under the cover of darkness, Clara slipped into the parking garage beneath Nathan's corporate headquarters. Dressed in black from head to toe, she moved silently, her footsteps muffled by the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. In her backpack, she carried a small device rigged with custom software designed to bypass security systems. It wasn't legal, but then again, neither was stealing someone's life's work. Reaching the service entrance, she paused, glancing around to ensure no cameras were trained on her position. Satisfied, she pulled out the device and connected it to the electronic lock. Within seconds, the door clicked open, granting her access to the labyrinthine corridors beyond. Inside, the building felt eerily quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak and groan. Clara navigated with practiced ease, avoiding motion detectors and skirting past guard patrols. Her destination was the server room, a fortress of data humming with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Finally, she reached the heavy steel door guarding the servers. Pulling out another gadget, she interfaced with the biometric scanner, using a fake fingerprint lifted from a discarded coffee cup. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing rows of blinking lights and whirring fans. Clara wasted no time. She connected her laptop to the mainframe, initiating a program designed to extract critical files related to Veritas. As the data streamed onto her encrypted drive, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. This was her redemption arc, her chance to turn the tables on the man who had wronged her. But just as the transfer neared completion, an alarm blared through the room, piercing the quiet like a knife. Clara froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Had she triggered a fail-safe? Or had someone discovered her intrusion? Grabbing her equipment, she bolted toward the exit, weaving through the maze of cubicles and stairwells. Behind her, shouts echoed, growing louder with each passing second. Security guards spilled into the hallways, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Thinking quickly, Clara ducked into an empty office, barricading the door with a desk chair. She activated a decoy signal on her phone, sending false GPS coordinates to confuse her pursuers. Then, slipping out a side window, she disappeared into the night. Back at her apartment, Clara reviewed the stolen data, her pulse racing with anticipation. Among the files, she found exactly what she had hoped for: internal memos detailing Nathan's manipulation of investors, falsified performance metrics, and damning evidence of his plagiarism. But most importantly, she uncovered a fatal flaw in Veritas programming, a vulnerability she could exploit to cripple the entire system. With renewed determination, Clara set to work crafting a virus tailored specifically to target Veritas. Unlike traditional malware, this program wouldn't destroy indiscriminately. It would infiltrate the AI's decision-making processes, causing subtle but catastrophic errors. Markets would crash, investments would falter, and Nathan's empire would crumble under the weight of its own hubris. As she coded late into the night, fueled by adrenaline and purpose, Clara allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about accountability. About proving that integrity mattered, even in a world obsessed with shortcuts and quick wins. The next morning, Clara received a call from an old friend, a journalist known for exposing corporate scandals. They met at a secluded cafe, where Clara handed over a USB drive containing the incriminating files. "This is everything," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside her. "Publish it when you're ready. Trust me, it's going to blow the lid off." Her friend nodded solemnly, pocketing the drive. "You understand the risks, right? If this gets traced back to you." Clara smiled faintly. "Let them try. I've got nothing left to lose." As she walked away from the cafe, Clara felt a strange sense of peace. The wheels were in motion now, unstoppable forces converging toward a single inevitable outcome. Whether Nathan faced legal repercussions or public disgrace, one thing was certain: he would pay for his actions. Yet even as victory loomed on the horizon, Clara couldn't shake the nagging question lingering in the back of her mind. What came after this? Could she ever truly move on from the betrayal, the lies, the loss? Or would the scars remain, reminders of a chapter she wished she could erase? For now, though, there was work to be done. Revenge might not heal all wounds, but it was a start. The weeks that followed were a blur of anticipation and tension. Clara watched from the shadows as her carefully orchestrated plan unfolded, piece by piece. The first wave of articles hit the newsstands, exposing Nathan's deception in vivid detail. Journalists dissected every memo, every falsified report, painting a damning portrait of greed and corruption. Investors who had once fawned over him began to distance themselves, their confidence shaken. But it was the flaw in Veritas, the one Clara had embedded deep within its code, that delivered the final blow. As the AI model started producing erratic predictions, companies relying on it suffered catastrophic losses. Stock prices plummeted, contracts were cancelled, and lawsuits piled up. Within days, Nathan's company was drowning in chaos, its reputation in tatters. Clara knew when to strike next. She reached out to key figures in the tech industry, former colleagues, competitors, and even some allies she hadn't realized she had, and presented them with an offer they couldn't refuse: her expertise in rebuilding what Nathan had broken. In exchange, she asked for nothing more than a chance to start anew, free from the constraints of corporate politics. To her surprise, they agreed almost immediately. It seemed the world was hungry for someone like Clara, not just a brilliant mind, but a person of integrity willing to stand up against injustice. Offers poured in from startups and established firms alike, each eager to bring her on board. For the first time in years, Clara felt truly valued, not because of her age or experience, but because of who she was. Nathan, meanwhile, found himself cornered. Stripped of his title and credibility, he became a pariah in the very circles he had once dominated. His attempts to defend himself fell flat, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Eventually, he disappeared from public view altogether, reduced to little more than a cautionary tale whispered at boardroom tables. With the dust settling, Clara decided it was time to step back into the light. She founded her own consultancy firm, focusing on ethical AI development and mentoring young innovators. Her mission was simple: to create technology that served humanity, not exploited it. Word spread quickly, and soon her firm attracted some of the brightest minds in the field. Together, they worked tirelessly, driven by a shared vision of progress rooted in honesty and compassion. One evening, as Clara stood on the rooftop of her new office building, overlooking the glittering city skyline, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The scars of betrayal still lingered, yes, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they reminded her of how far she'd come, and how much she had achieved despite the odds. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from one of her ments, a young woman named Mia who reminded Clara so much of her younger self. "We did it," the text read. "The prototype passed all tests. You should see the team, they're celebrating downstairs." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. This was her legacy now, not revenge, not bitterness, but hope. Hope that the next generation would learn from her mistakes, that they would carry forward the lessons she had fought so hard to teach. Walking back inside, Clara joined the celebration, laughing and cheering alongside her team. For the first time in years, she felt whole again. The battle may have been brutal, the cost steep, but the victory was worth every ounce of pain. And as she raised a glass to toast their success, she knew one thing for certain. She had taken back control of her life, and built something better in its place.